Hello, my name's Kevin, this is Dirty 20 Gaming, and this time we're talking about working with your Dungeon Master. Some tables run a bit like a Victorian ship of the line, with the captain separate from the crew and all the information flowing in one direction. Other tables run more like a pirate ship. The captains of these vessels do have the final say as to what happens to the ship and crew, but they accept input from the crew, and the crew actually have the power to affect change. So guess which one of those tables I like to play at, and DM at if it comes right down to it. For me, working with your Dungeon Master starts well before the game begins, and it continues at a reduced rate throughout the game. Before the game, because that makes sense that we'll start there, by all means, please write a story before your session 0 with your Dungeon Master and include lots of hooks for them. But please leave it flexible enough so you can adjust it to fit into their world. I mean, it's their world. You need to fit into it. So ideally, when it comes to session 0, your character's backstory should be a collaboration between you, the player, and the DM. You, as the player, bring the heart-wrenching backstory complete with betrayal and woe. Or maybe you're from a family of jesters. I don't know. Either way, you bring that, and the DM tells you what your character knows about this world. This doesn't get done enough, and I, hand on heart, am guilty of this sin. Many games start with their characters that have no connection or even any real knowledge of the world that they inhabit. And unless it's a sort of Curse of Strahd teleported to a strange land situation, then it doesn't make sense. So work with your DM to give your character an in-game, in-world history. This could include things like place names, map knowledge, religious knowledge, political knowledge, anything that the Dungeon Master thinks would help you work your character into the world that they've built. The next collaboration requires not only the Dungeon Master, but at least one other player. And this is the result of that question that's often asked and very seldom answered in the positive. Do any of these characters know each other before the game starts? I mean, sometimes, especially in a one-shot, it makes sense that they wouldn't. You know, maybe they're passengers on a hijacked stagecoach, and that's where it starts. But I think characters that know each other beforehand, I think it's underutilized. And I think it makes sense to me that friends or family or army buddies would sign up to adventure together. So, I mean, imagine the roleplay opportunities if a father and son, or an overprotective father and his recently mature daughter, started venturing together. Or even two buddies who push each other to ever more outrageous acts of bravery. Or two characters that are specifically designed to not get along, but are forced to work together. All these are just examples. There's lots more. But those are all things that you can work with. And all of this has to happen before the game starts, and it all needs the DM to be part of it. So work with them before the game. The more, the better. I mean, the more you can work your character into their world, the better they're going to fit, and the more real it's going to feel right off the hop. So once the game starts and the dice start to fly, I find it best to do most of my communicating, if any, with the Dungeon Master privately. So unless it's vital, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes, wait until after the current session. Don't interrupt it unless it's really essential, and again, I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. A couple things to start off with. Please don't overdo it. Your DM is already working really hard. But do communicate with them if you feel like you need a little help with your story arc. Ask them to put you in a situation where you have to make a decision, where your character is given an opportunity to change. Also, request things like, can we explore this particular bit of my backstory? With that one, be prepared for a maybe, a cagey maybe, or maybe even a flat out no if they've got something else in mind. But it's okay to ask. It's also okay to request more combat or more roleplay, depending on what it is you want. And the thing with that is, if the DM gets the same information from multiple players, they can adjust the game accordingly to make it better. It's also good to clarify what your character does and does not know. In other words, am I supposed to be confused, or is there something I missed? Now for the slightly less fun bit. These are really important reasons that you need to talk to your DM during the game. If you're feeling under-involved, if you're feeling left out, definitely speak to the DM after this first session that starts to feel the way that you feel. Let them know. They can work you back into the game. They can work with you and make that better. If you're feeling run over by other players or the DM, if you're feeling picked on by other players or the DM, if you're being pushed out of your comfort zone, if anything or anyone makes you uncomfortable, or if anyone is acting in a way that is unacceptable to you, then speak to the DM as soon as possible. Those last three, especially picked on, pushed out of your comfort zone, and unacceptable behavior, at least those three are important enough, in my opinion, to stop the game mid-session and ask for a private word with the Dungeon Master. That kind of thing needs to be resolved immediately. This game is about having fun, and if it's not fun, you need to fix that. On a slightly lighter note, let's finish on this. Don't present your DM with a script when you go to them with an idea. Bring them a rough idea. Usually a sentence or two is enough. Let them run with it. This is what they do. And one final warning. Please, 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 as a DM, bring your stuff to the Dungeon Master. But expect them to act like a genie and twist what you ask for. In a recent game, I had a monk character who the player had never played a monk before, and he said, I want to fight another monk. So I timed it right after another fight, and I made another monk, and I kicked his ass. Another player in the same game said, I'd like to interact with some of my family. So I had one of his family kidnap him and try and return him to the family keep to be killed for leaving them in the first place. It led to a whole rescue mission. So be careful what you wish for. And as always, until next week, game creatively. Bye.